Welcome to this pre-study video presentation prior to the NODEFIC NATO Logistic Training. This presentation is one of 5 short presentations that all are mandatory before applying to the NODEFIC online digital training. Those of you who has completed the online digital training may apply to the 1-week practical and functional orientated NATO logistic training at NODEFIC in Oslo, Norway. Please find more information at our webpage. After this introduction, you should be able to recall NATO Doctrinal Hierarchy, NATO Logistic Handbook, and NATO Documents website. NATO defined doctrine as a framework of principles, practices, and procedures, the clear understanding and acceptance of which is a prerequisite for operations to be conducted by joint allied forces. It evolves as the political and strategic situation changes, and in the light of a new technology, experience, including lesson identified, lesson learned, and the outcome of operational analysis. NATO policy and doctrine form the fundamental principles by which NATO military forces guide their actions in support of objectives. The NATO document hierarchy is like a pyramid. At the top, the few high-level policy documents, and at the bottom, the numerous detailed low-level. Here, mate, is what we are going to do. They are produced at different times, so it's sometimes repetition and contradictions between them. On the top, you will find the multinational policy documents developed at the highest NATO level, which means that they are on a strategic level produced by the military committee. They describe what to be done. On the middle level, you will find the doctrine documents, Allied Joint Publications. They provide fundamental logistic doctrines under which more detailed logistic techniques and procedures are established. And at the bottom, we have the documents describing a technique or procedure at a strategic command level or in a NATO standardization agreements. These Allied Joint Publications are the keystone doctrine documents. Allied Joint Publications 01 is the backbone of the Allied Joint Publication documents. NATO documents are also applicable for non-NATO countries participating in a NATO operation. The Allied Joint Publication series of the doctrines have a division according to the standard NATO staff functionality, G1 to up to G9. The NATO concept of logistics is described in the Allied Joint Publication 4, Allied Joint Logistic Doctrine. We will come back to the standard behind the Allied Joint Publication 4. Let us look closer into the policy and doctrine documents for us logisticians. As earlier mentioned, the military committee documents are on a strategic level and the Allied Joint Publications are on an operational level. Let's see how the military committees and the Allied Joint Publications are built up. When you investigate the index of a military committee document, you will find it's very similar with the index of the next document in line, the Allied Joint Publications. Of course, MC 319 is the keystone for the Allied Joint Publication 4 logistics. We have on this slide only highlighted the main logistical military committee documents. MC 326 for medical, the MC 334 for host nation support, and the MC 336 movement and transportation. The Allied Joint Publication group of documents consists of the main document, Allied Joint Publication 4, which is the overall doctrines for Allied logistics. During the update process of these logistic doctrines, some of them will change names before the 2025. Allied Joint Publication 4, Logistics, will change name to Allied Joint Publication for Sustainment. The Allied Joint Publication 4-10 Medical will change to Allied Joint Publication 4-2. The Allied Joint Publication 4-6 Joint Logistic Support Group and the Allied Joint Publication 4-6 Petroleum will be a part of the new Allied Joint Publication 4-1 Logistic, and then those two will of course be deleted. The 4 Allied Logistic Publication documents are dealing with logistic doctrines on the 3 branches, maritime, land and air, and the Tactical Joint Logistic Support Group. These documents can't be a joint document. They are therefore Allied Logistic Publications documents. STANAG, Standardization Agreement. NATO standardization documents specifies the agreement of member nations to implement a standard in the whole or in a part, with or without reservations, in order to meet an interoperability requirement. It requires national ratification and approval to be promulgated. As mentioned in an earlier slide, the Allied Joint Publication 4, Allied Joint Logistic Doctrine, has been ratified and approved by the NATO nations in STANAG 2182. BISEC documents are developed to serve a particular purpose and do not need approval of the NATO nations. One example is the BISEC capability codes and capability statements. This document provides a common language for capabilities in an operational planning. The document defines the minimum capability requirements within all parts of an operation, included logistical. For example, the minimum petroleum, oil and lubricant storage capacity for a forward fuel installation, or the minimum number of doctors or nurses at a medical treatment facility. The last 2 documents we will introduce is the AAP 06 and the AAP 15. These 2 documents contains all NATO terms and definitions and the abbreviations. The NATO Logistic Handbook is a good tool to understand the NATO logistics. The handbook also introduces the logisticians or the reader at an early level to some of NATO's basic principles, policies, concepts, and the organization which they will encounter during their work. The NATO Logistic Handbook is available at our NODEFIC website, together with the pre-study presentations. We recommend you to study this handbook. Please remember that the handbook is not formally agreed, and we should therefore not use the handbook as a reference. We recommend that you request access to the NATO website for all NATO documents. The NATO processing time is normally 1 or 2 days. You will need a military email to be able to access the system. Up in the right corner on the web page, you will find both the request for access and the login area. We have in this presentation introduced you to the NATO document hierarchy and the main logistical documents and doctrines. We recommend you to arrange access to NATO website, where all the updated NATO doctrines and documents are available. We also recommend that you study closer the NATO Logistic Handbook. Thank you for following this presentation.